what it's like to spend a week at Baha Mar, Bahamas. Welcome to Vacation Mavens, the podcast that brings you travel inspiration and practical tips from two moms who know how to plan the perfect trip.
I'm Tamara from Your Time to Fly.
And I'm Kim from Stuffed Suitcase. With over 40 years of travel experience between us, we're here to share our favorite destinations from road trips to cruising, theme parks, and European adventures.
Whether you're planning a family vacation or a mom getaway, we have the tips and tricks to make memories that will last a lifetime.
Tamara, you just got back from a hopefully sunshiny, I did see you had a little rain, but sunshiny week in the Bahamas, which I think for a lot of people, that is a dream kind of vacation. So why don't we kick in and talk from your travel agent hat? What made you choose the Baha Mar, and what maybe are some other properties that you considered when you were looking for this kind of vacation?
Yeah, absolutely. I will have to say it was really fun to stay in one place for 7 nights and not have to repack. And we just did our packing tips episode a couple of weeks ago, and it was such a relief to pack for this one because I'm like, okay, dresses for the night, swimsuits for the day, and a couple pairs of shorts and tank tops for breakfast, and that's it. So
That's a super easy vacation packing list.
And this one, we don't often do trips like this, but we were taking this trip because it was a multi-generational trip. My in-laws have in the past taken the whole family to some other places. We've gone to Costa Rica, we've gone to Aruba, we've actually went to the Atlantis many years ago. So we've done a few of these, one in Mexico. And so trying to fit the needs of 14 people into one trip, with a certain generous budget, but budget nonetheless, is challenging because my in-laws, first of all, have mobility issues. We actually had to get a wheelchair for them. And so getting into and out of high suburban type of taxis is difficult. Walking very far is going to be difficult. So you have to look at all the different kind of transportation types of things. And then my sister, we were with my husband's 2 sisters and their families and his parents. And all the kids are 16 or 17 on up to 23. So they're more young adults now. And so they're looking for activities. And someone also really wanted a casino, which not my thing, but so all of those kind of things combined, and also knowing that we're staying 7 days means you need different restaurants. You don't want to eat at the same restaurant every night.
That's true.
But getting to someplace in town could also be challenging. So I looked at a lot of different places. We looked at Grand Cayman. There's a few properties that I really like there. I looked at Aruba again. We had done the Ritz-Carlton before. I didn't really love it. So this time I was looking at the Hyatt there. And I was also looking at Anguilla because that's one of my want-to-go-to places.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of places there. There was a Hilton, Zemi beach house, I believe it's called, that everybody kind of liked, but it just didn't have everything that was hitting those things. And I think we talked about this when we talked about Turks and Caicos maybe, but a lot of the islands, they really do use for their taxis big SUVs. And it's just really hard for my mother-in-law to get in and out of that. She really needs a sedan. So if we're going to be going to dinner a lot, to try to figure that out, and just the cost of transporting 14 people back and forth, if you, even if it's walkable for us, then it's not walkable for them, and so most of these places had only 1 or 2 restaurants, and they're all pricey. And we ended up staying at the Grand Hyatt in Baha Mar. And from a room perspective, the price was really good. I was able to get some perks, which we can talk about. And, the reason why we chose this is it has, I don't even know how many restaurants, but picture this is like a Vegas style resort. There's 3 different hotels in one property where they're all kind of connected through a casino. So you're able to easily walk and get to all these different really nice restaurants. And we're kind of foodies, so we want good food. We weren't looking at
all-inclusive,
an all-inclusive. And and we were also looking at a direct flight, which they're in Fort Lauderdale. So for them, it's a half-hour flight over to the Bahamas.
Wow.
And for us, we can go direct from Boston. So that's an easy part because, again, the more transfers that you're having with the grandparents, that just adds issues. So we really wanted something where you could fly direct. And they didn't want to go to Mexico. They didn't want to go to the Dominican Republic. Anyway, that's where we narrowed it down to, and kind of all the decision factors. And I think when you think about a multi-gen trip, you really need to think about and how they come into play.
Yeah, and you're
And all
lucky you
throughout
didn't
the
need
trip,
kid clubs because that's
yeah,
probably another other thing that people have to worry about kids clubs. I'm guessing Baha
right,
Mar,
right.
this place probably had good kids clubs as well, even if you
They
didn't need
they
them.
definitely yeah, they definitely had a kids club, but yeah,
Good.
they've aged out of that. But
Yeah.
my sister-in-law was kept saying, "Oh, but the food is really expensive at Baha Mar," and we'll definitely talk about that. But I
Yeah,
honestly think, as we talked about with Turks and Caicos, like all of these island resorts where they're bringing in a
of course.
food and they're having a celebrity chef name on a restaurant, like these
Yeah.
are going to be pricey. So picture it as I think you and I had talked about. If you're going to dinner in New York or Miami, or LA or something like this is what you're going to spend.
Right.
It's definitely not cheap, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That's all good stuff, good to think about. You mentioned that there's three hotels on site at Baha Mar. So you said you stayed at the Grand Hyatt. Are the other ones Hyatt properties as well, or is it like a shared?
No, it's interesting actually. I don't know quite how it came about, but there's the Rosewood Bahamar, which is the high-end luxury. It's a
Okay.
smaller hotel, but it's, beautiful, but that is your luxury property. Then you have the SLS hotel, which there's an SLS that I've been to in South Beach in Miami, and it definitely is that is like the party scene if you're in your 20s or you're going with friends, you're going as a couple, that's where you want to stay. So the
Okay.
Rosewoods, I would say it is anyone that could afford to stay there. When I looked, it was starting at $1,800 a night for the non-ocean view room.
That's not how I
Um,
want to
but
spend my money.
but you see families there, but it tends to be a little bit older, just given the price
Yeah.
point and all that.
Yeah.
And yeah, the SLS, you could hear that rooftop bar just blasting from my hotel room.
Okay.
And there is also like the pool party type of pool, with the blasting music. We walked by one day and Hannah's just looking at him like, why are they all just standing around drinking? Like, why aren't they dancing or something? We're going to play music like this. So anyway, that's its
Funny.
own vibe.
Okay.
Again, it looks like a beautiful hotel, but I knew that one wasn't for us. And
Yeah.
so the Grand Hyatt is kind of that like Goldilocks, like just
Middle of the
right
road.
type
Yep.
of
Yep.
thing. And, good pricing, a huge range of room categories. And what worked out, we at first considered keeping my in laws at the Rosewood because they've stayed there before, and the rest of us being at the Grand Hyatt. But if you do that, the Rosewood pools are reserved for Rosewood guests only. The
Uh,
SLS pools are reserved for SLS guests only. The Grand Hyatt pools kind of anybody can go to.
Anybody
So
can use them.
we knew that they couldn't come over to us, so we could, and if we couldn't come over to them, it didn't make sense to be at separate hotels. But
Yeah.
the Grand Hyatt actually has a section called the Reserve. So this is kind of like their hotel within a hotel. So it
Yeah.
has a different entrance. It includes like a lounge where they have, some continental breakfast and drinks in the evening, that kind of thing. And it's more suite style. So they had a one
Okay.
bedroom suite. And that worked out. They actually said that they liked it just as much as their Rosewood room when they had stayed there before. And it was
Hmm.
about half the price. So that's a good way where if you still want like that luxury feel, but without going all the way up to Rosewood, you can do the reserve within the Grand Hyatt.
Nice. Yeah. That's good to know. So, do you want to talk about do you need to talk about any logistics like getting to and from the resort? And then maybe kind of things you did during your week there. It sounds like you mostly stayed at the resort. So, what kind of activities did you do while you were there? And then we'll kind of wrap up with the food, maybe.
Yeah, the activities are going to be really easy because we basically didn't
Yeah.
do anything.
I
But
was curious about the
getting there,
pool vibes. So, that's always something good to
yes,
know. But
I
yeah.
will definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
We Getting there was pretty easy. It's actually arriving into Nassau is much easier than some of the other islands. It is a more traditional airport in terms of you're going down a corridor that's air conditioned and there's an arrivals hall. And honestly, I think there were maybe two people in front of me. You had to fill out a little form on arrival, and there were only a couple people in front of us to go through that immigration passport control. So it was
Nice.
super easy. I had prearranged a transfer just because I knew with everyone that was going to be the best way to go. So I actually don't know what the taxi situation is.
Okay.
So because we
What
did the
about with
round trip
Hannah? Because
transfers.
Hannah joined you later, right? Did she
She
fly
did,
direct there
yeah.
from China or how did she?
That
Okay, never
was
mind.
such
We won't
a
talk about it.
that
Okay.
no no it's
Oh,
fine. That it was just like one of those. You were just talking about your stressful day. We've had a couple
yes.
of the poor girl has had a fair amount of stressful days. Like she was coming from Beijing, her flight was delayed. And so she was maybe going to miss the San Francisco to Tucson flight. So she rebooked on a later one, but then was on standby and she ended up making the standby. And so did her bag. But anyway, she was in Tucson for like maybe 10 hours, and then she flew from there to the Bahamas. So she did
Okay.
arrive 3 or 4 days after us, and I set up a transfer for her too because
Okay.
again, just from a the girl's exhausted and
Yeah.
stressed and, doesn't in traveling by herself. So, yeah.
Yep. Makes sense.
She
Good
went
to
back
know.
with all of her cousins, so it was
Oh,
good.
okay. Nice. So then what did you guys do on site? It sounds like mostly the pool, but what was the beach like as well?
Yeah, so there's tons of pools, and the Grand Hyatt has a lot of different options. But the one thing that I will say is that there's like a family pool that has a zero entry. There's a few adults only pools. There's some pools where you can only go to it if you've rented a cabana or rented a lounge chair. So they're very into, there's a lot of add-on costs. So they're very into renting the cabana, renting the lounge chair, renting the sunbed. And honestly, I think if you don't do that, especially if you're there in a busy season, I don't even know what time you need to go down to get your
I
chairs
hate
that aren't
that.
one of these because there's so many different pools, but so many of them have these rental options. And one of the ones so what we did is, again, for mobility issues, there's one kind of more exclusive, it's like you have to be a member of a club or pay to rent a cabana there.
Okay.
So there's like a little members club within the property. And those cabanas have an inside with a couch and they have a bathroom. And so
Oh,
for my
nice.
in-laws, like again, getting them back and forth to the hotel or to the beach bathroom is just going to be too difficult. And I needed something that we could wheel them out to as well, not without stairs and things.
Sure.
So we rented the nicest cabana, and so it fit up to 8 people, although they were really generous about letting like people come and go. And so we ended up having this amazing, almost like private pool experience with its own bar,
Wow.
its own service, hot tub, all of that. It had like
Nice.
indoor area and then like a outdoor table and then a couple of lounge chairs in the water. So that's what we did at the Nexus Club. But even still, if I wasn't with them, I still would have probably looked to rent some kind of like lounge chair or something for most days. A
Did you
pool,
guys rent that each time
we
or
did.
just one? Okay.
Yeah, no, we rented it for the week. So
Okay. Gotcha.
you do it
Okay.
by the day, actually,
Yeah.
but yeah. And then the beach area there's tons of chairs, but it is one of those, it's not a very wide beach. It's fairly long, but it's not, or deep, I should say, maybe.
Yeah.
And you have maybe 4 to 6 rows of chairs pretty tightly squeezed in there, right before the water. So
Okay.
you could definitely get chairs at the beach, but you might be like halfway down this long row. And, it's not like super easy and it's definitely not private.
Yeah.
You're going to be around a lot of people. Even, being there in June is definitely not their high season, but it was still pretty busy and pretty packed. They do also have a water park on site.
Oh,
So
okay.
the kids, they didn't go over there once Hannah came, but and I actually never walked over there to check it out. I was a little bit lazy this trip because it was not a working trip where usually I'm like, I need to go film everything. I need to go take pictures. I need to go check it out. And I'm going to sit by the pool, so I was
Nice. Yep.
relaxing. I could see the water park from my room and I saw it had a few like really big slides. It has a lazy river, but I can't quite speak to is it good for the little kids or not.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. That sounds amazing. Like that you got away and just let yourself relax. Because
Yeah.
we, especially in our job, we forget that. And it is nice to have that every once in a while.
Yeah. Every now and then I was like, oh, I should probably take some pictures, but I mostly I hung out and it
Nice.
was good for sure. And I will say the kids also did paddleboarding. And then there's other activities that you could arrange through vendors like on the beach. Like they
Beach.
have
Okay.
those, I don't know if you remember that car in the water video that I posted when I was in Turks and
Yeah.
Caicos. So they have
Yep.
that. They have the banana boat being pulled by the boat, but it looks like a rubber ducky.
Oh,
But then there's also like an official activities desk where they'll do, snorkeling, and you can borrow snorkels and things too, but they'll do excursions. There's like the full day trip to Exuma for the swimming with the pigs, which no one was interested in swimming with the piggy poop. And yeah, and then there's a kids club. There's a list of activities that they do during the day. They have this one area where they have a bunch of flamingos and they do like a flamingo parade at 9:30 and
okay.
so there's definitely a bunch of other things that you can do on property, but it is, mostly the pools and the beach.
Okay. Are most of those activities then also extra costs since you said that they upcharge a lot?
Most of them, they didn't have to pay for the paddle boards, pretty
Okay.
sure. And but some were, like the flamingo yoga was an extra cost. And,
Yeah,
so
okay. Yep,
and certainly like the day trips and excursions
of
were
course. Yeah.
extra.
Okay.
The water
Let's,
park was
yeah.
not. The water park was
Oh, good.
included.
Yeah, it's included.
Yeah.
And let's move on then to the food. Was breakfast included? Lunch? How much? Like good restaurants? What did you think? Was it like a cruise ship with lots of rest? What was it like?
Yeah, I guess it is kind of like a cruise ship, but it was definitely the food was surprisingly good because
That's
sometimes,
good.
especially when you're paying a lot, you want to make sure that it's actually worth it. So sometimes at a hotel, you're not quite sure what it's going to be like, but I was impressed by the food. And that it takes maybe a little bit more to impress me
Yeah,
than
of
some.
course. Yeah, no, I know.
So there's one restaurant called the Regatta, which is a huge breakfast buffet. It
Okay.
has everything. It had Asian food. It had make your own taco bar and tamales and all the typical breakfast food and two omelet stations. And there was a whole display of like popsicles and mochi and little desserts you could have too, fresh fruit. It was a huge, wonderful display. It would typically be, I think, $44 a person.
Okay.
But I will say I booked this. My agency is a partner with Hyatt. And so for the luxury Hyatt brands, they're part of what they call the Hyatt Privé collection. And so I was able to book it and get free breakfast for two for everyone every day. So that saved, almost $100 a day per room. And
Yeah.
then I was able to get $100 resort credit per room, a $50 beverage credit per room, and automatic upgrade within 24 hours of bookings, like a fountain view, and everybody got upgraded to an ocean view. So,
Nice.
that like we added it up, and because we had 8 rooms for 7 nights, it was almost $5,000 worth of value just by booking it the way, booking it through me. So if
With your
anyone does want
bonus.
to
Yep.
go, please let me know because that is a huge savings. Otherwise, there's like a Starbucks and there's a little French cafe where you can go and pick up something light. Lunch tended to be like by the pool ordering things. But what I
Oh,
really
yeah.
liked is that they have a number of food trucks down by the beach. So you can charge it to your room. So there
Oh,
was
that's cool.
one that was hot dogs. There was one that was Mexican. There was one that was Street Bird by Marcus Samuelson. So it was like fried chicken stuff. And so there was a
Yeah.
bunch of things like that and tons of pool bars. So there are a lot of lunch options. And then dinners, they definitely recommend that you pre-book your dinner reservations. And there are many restaurants. There's kind of, yeah, your typical mix of there's like your Asian fusion slash sushi restaurant, the Chinese restaurant, the Italian restaurant, which did just close for renovation the day after we were there, a steakhouse, and then there's Cafe Baloo, which is Daniel Balud's one of his restaurants. He's chef, and Marcus Samuelson, also a famous chef.
I
He,
like him. I know him.
yeah, he
I mean,
has
I don't know him personally.
his.
I was just saying, I know that
That would be
name.
cool.
I know that would be
His
cool.
restaurant Marcus is down by the pier, by the beach. So we went to all of those that I mentioned. And surprisingly, I had really low expectations for the Chinese, and we actually booked it before Hannah got there because we're like, she's not going to need more Chinese food. It was my favorite meal of the trip. It was
Oh,
really
nice.
exceptional. It was
That's amazing.
so good. I mean, I would like almost go back just to go there. Everything was really
Shocking.
good. Yeah, really, I was impressed. But like I said, oh, and the Mediterranean place was also really
Oh,
good. That
that
one
would be
was in the
yummy.
SLS.
I love a lot of Mediterranean, but not so much like octopus, some of the
Yeah.
seafoods, but I love a lot of their other stuff.
The 2 times in my life when I've liked octopus, and one of them was with you when we were in
Yeah.
Scottsdale,
Oh, that's right. Yep.
and then the other time was just when I was in
When you
Chile.
were in, oh, in Chile, because I
Yeah.
thought you were gonna say in Greece. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. That sounds amazing. It sounds really, I think you did well on choosing because I know you had the hat of picking where you guys were gonna say. How did everyone enjoy their time? Were they happy?
Yeah,
Mostly,
everyone was
for the
really
most part.
happy. I think my in-laws, they were happy because it worked for them. They
Yeah.
understood that they need to bring somebody with them to help them out. But it had everything that people were looking for, and mostly people just wanted to decompress and relax. And,
Yeah.
I think also having that cabana area really
I was
made
gonna
that,
say,
yeah.
yeah, because I can just see if you're traveling with a family and you don't get to rent something like that, it would be really stressful to have to find
Yeah,
chairs
especially a
for all
big
of you.
family.
Yep.
And we had kind of
Yep.
thought, oh, sometimes we'll be on the beach and sometimes we'll be at the pools. And we did a little bit. There was some back and forth. I know some of my nephews went to play golf one day, and people were doing their own thing, but mostly really hanging out at that cabana. So that was kind of
Nice.
a bit of a lifesaver. But yeah,
I'm curious what the water park is like compared to the Atlantis water park.
I mean, it's not as pretty as the
Okay.
Atlantis. It looked a
More
little bit more
basic.
of a basic one,
Yep.
but you're
Okay.
not paying an additional fee. There's no
Yep.
outside visitors as far as I could tell.
Yep.
So
Great.
that makes a big difference.
Nice. Is there anything else, any final tips you want to share? Maybe ideas for people are thinking about a vacation like this, kind of a resort vacation? Any packing must-haves or anything
Yeah,
else?
so one thing that really stood out to me was that I didn't like I wouldn't want to go there with a family with young kids. Like they had a kids club, and yes, they have like places where you can get ice cream and there's some activities, but it felt like an older.
Okay.
And I think also because everything is centrally coming off of this centrally located casino, like you're constantly like you're walking into registration for the hotel, and then you have to walk through the casino to get to the elevators for your room. You have to walk through the casino to get out to the pool. You have to walk to
Yeah.
through the casino to get to the restaurants. And I will tell you, the last night I was just kind of done. And my in-laws and the kids, because you can gamble also at 18, you can drink and gamble
Oh,
at
okay.
18 there.
Yeah.
So they were, enjoying playing blackjack or going to the sports book because, of course, the Panthers were playing and stuff like that. And that was
We're
fun.
cheering for the other team. It's not looking good right now.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was just done. And it was then a Friday night. And there was this huge group of women, all in white. They were probably on it could be a
Bachelorette
bachelorette, it
trip.
could have been like some kind of reunion or whatever. But they were drunk and they were loud and they were in my way. And I just like dart through. And then Glenn's looking around. He's like, "Where did you go?" And I'm like, "I can't take it. I'm done. I'm going upstairs, putting on my pajamas and reading a book." Like, I don't gamble. It's so boring to sit there and watch people for more than 5 minutes. And I don't know, just so like bringing the kids through that all the time. And the other really kind of weird thing about the Baha Mar is that I felt old there. Like there are so many people, kids that are like 18 to 22
Oh. I
there
wonder
as
if it's
like
also like the time you went, like grad
maybe,
college,
but
maybe
it's
they all
like
got out of college
packs
and
of them. And I'm
yeah. I'm
like,
guessing it's like college trips. They all like
yeah.
buddies, like frats and sororities and stuff.
Well, and actually,
Um,
my niece Sophie had just been down in the Bahamas for her high school senior trip. They stayed next door at the Breezes, which she's didn't have nice things to say about that.
yeah.
And then they would come over to the Baha Mar at night for the restaurants and the casino and the bars and stuff.
Okay.
And so I think it might be some of that as well. But
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
like walking through, you got this like pack of, kind of teenagers like walking
Yeah.
toward the SLS elevators to go up to the rooftop bar. I just, we kept looking around. Who's paying for it? Who are you affording this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really interesting how many kind of young people like to go there.
Yeah.
And so I would just point that out because I know I had some people asking me before I went, would you recommend it for families with young kids? And personally, and you can listen to this whole description of what I just gave and see if it's right for you. But I like when we did the trips to like Grand Velas and Riviera Maya, to me, that was so much more family oriented and
Yeah.
did a much better job of family and kid programming. And I would go to a place like, beaches or a
Yeah.
quieter place where they have a kids club, but you're not kind of also surrounded by a lot of like people that are there to like drink,
Party.
gamble,
Yeah.
So that
Was it smoking in the
no,
casino? Oh,
thankfully,
good.
no
Okay, good.
smoking. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be a deal breaker for
Oh
me. As
gosh.
for
Yeah.
Vegas, I almost prefer to stay at the hotels that don't have the casinos
Oh,
because I don't want to walk
absolutely.
through the smoking casino every time to go to the elevators. But
Absolutely.
great. Hopefully, this episode was helpful for all of our listeners. And of course, if you want to see more pictures or have more questions, you can always reach out to Tamara on her account at Your Time to Fly. And then, just so you guys know, when this comes out, I will be getting ready to head to Switzerland. And I have a fun little thing about maybe we'll have to talk about how my flights and how I booked it. And I just scored a little deal with the flights because of a flight change that I got to share eventually. But
Nice.
yeah, so we will be having that. And then Tamara's off to the Galapagos and stuff. So we have busy summer travels, which means we'll be skipping next week. But don't get worried. We're coming right back with another fabulous episodes.
See you next time. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe and rate and review on your favorite podcast app, as that helps other people discover us. And if you want to see more, follow me, Tamara, at Your Time to Fly on Instagram and Facebook and all the others.
And you can follow me, Kim, at Stuffed Suitcase on Instagram, Facebook, and of course my blog.